Closure is not given. It's a conscious decision you make for your own healing. We grow up believing that closure is something someone owes us. That if a relationship ends, if someone walks away, if a connection breaks, the other person should sit across from us and explain why. That they should answer all our questions, wrap the story in a bow, and hand it back to us with clarity and grace. But that's not how life always works. People leave abruptly, people ghost, people disappear in the middle of conversations that felt sacred. And they don't always give you the words you think you need. They don't always give you understanding. They don't always give you closure. But that does not mean you have to stay stuck. That does not mean you have to remain suspended in the space they abandoned. Because closure was never meant to come from someone else. Closure is not an external gift. It is an internal choice. When you keep waiting for someone else to give you closure, you are putting your healing in their hands. You are saying, I can't move forward until you explain why you hurt me. You are allowing the person who broke your heart to also control the timing of your recovery. But healing is not something that belongs to them. Healing belongs to you. You get to say when it starts. You get to decide that even if they never come back, even if they never answer, even if they never tell the truth, you are still worthy of peace. You are still worthy of moving forward. You are still worthy of joy. Closure is about reclaiming your power, about choosing yourself over the silence they left you in, about refusing to wait for someone to finish a conversation they walked away from. Making the decision to give yourself closure doesn't mean you forget what happened. It doesn't mean you pretend the pain wasn't real. It means you acknowledge the hurt, you honor the lesson, and you make a deliberate decision to not let that moment define the rest of your story. You can mourn what was, you can cry for what never became, but then you stand in your truth and say, I deserve to feel whole again. Because healing isn't about going back and making the past okay. It's about choosing to live fully despite the past being incomplete. You don't need someone else to sign off on your healing. You don't need them to agree that it hurt. You don't need them to finally realize your worth. You get to rise anyway. You get to breathe again. You get to create closure in the form of self-respect. Closure is a boundary you set with the parts of you that still hope they'll come back and fix it. Closure is telling that hopeful, aching part of yourself, they may never return, but I'm not going to stay behind with them. It is reminding yourself that your worth was never tied to their ability to see it. It is the strength to choose peace, even if they never make things right. Because sometimes closure looks like finally deleting the message you were waiting to send. Sometimes it looks like not checking their page anymore. Sometimes it's as simple and as hard as saying, I will not give any more of my life to someone who's no longer here. You don't have to keep opening old wounds hoping for healing to walk through the door. You don't have to keep dragging yourself through what-ifs and whys. You are allowed to say, this ends with me. You are allowed to close the door with your own hands. You are allowed to choose healing even if they never choose to explain. Closure is not what they do. It's what you decide. It's a shift in your spirit. It's the moment you stop chasing and start reclaiming. Waiting for them to explain keeps you emotionally tied to a story that's already over. It's one of the most human things we do. Hold on. Hold on to the idea that if they could just tell us why, if they could just say something honest, something kind, something that acknowledges the pain they caused, we would finally be able to let go. But what we often don't realize is that the waiting becomes its own kind of pain. The waiting becomes its own kind of wound. Because while we're hoping for answers, life is moving forward without us. And instead of healing, we're lingering in limbo, caught between what was and what might never be. There's a part of you that still believes they owe you something. That after everything you gave, after all the love you offered, after how open and vulnerable you were, they should have the decency to at least explain. And maybe they should. But the truth is, whether or not they asterisk should asterisk doesn't change whether or not they asterisk will asterisk. You can sit in that space for weeks, months, even years, waiting for a conversation that may never come, waiting for them to be the person you needed them to be, and in the meantime, you're replaying moments, rewriting your memories, wondering if maybe you were the problem. You start doubting your intuition, second, guessing your feelings, and all because you haven't been given a final line in a story that ended without your consent. But what if I told you the story was already done? Not because it didn't matter, not because your pain isn't valid, but because holding on to someone who's already walked away doesn't make them return. It only keeps you from walking forward. When you wait for them to explain, you're tethering your healing to someone else's timing. You're handing them the pen and saying, "You get to decide when I stop hurting." But they're not writing this chapter anymore. You are. You are the one who wakes up with this ache. You are the one who lies in bed wondering what went wrong. You are the one who's had to leave with the silence, and you are the one who has the power to decide that their silence doesn't get the final word. There is nothing wrong with wanting closure. It's a natural response to loss and confusion. But there is something deeply dangerous about waiting for it from someone who's shown you they cannot or will not give it. Because that wait can turn into obsession, that wait can become a cage, and slowly you lose yourself in the hope that one day they'll come back and make it all make sense. But here's what they don't tell you. Some people can't explain what they did because they don't even understand it themselves. Some people won't explain what they did because that would require them to confront their own reflection, and they're not ready for that. And some people simply don't value you enough to care about the impact they've had. It's not fair, it's not just, and it's not your fault. But it asterisk is asterisk your responsibility to choose what you do next. Do you keep waiting, circling the same emotional drain, reopening the same wounds, praying they'll evolve into someone capable of honesty? Or do you release the need for answers and trust that peace doesn't always come with explanation, it comes with acceptance? Acceptance that the story ended the way it did, not because you weren't enough, but because they weren't ready, willing, or able to give you what you needed. Acceptance that closure, real closure, is something you grant yourself when you choose to stop looking backwards and start walking into the life that's still waiting for you. You don't have to understand why they let you go to know that you deserve someone who would never leave you wondering. True peace begins when you release the need to be understood by someone who couldn't see you clearly. One of the deepest forms of heartbreak is not just being hurt, it's being misunderstood in your hurt. It's having your intentions misread, your love unseen, your truth dismissed by someone you gave your heart to. There's a part of us that craves not just closure, but recognition. We want them to see us, to finally understand what we meant, who we were, what we were trying to give. We hold onto that hope that one day they'll look back and say, "Now I see what you were trying to do," or "I finally get why you were hurting." And we tie our peace to that possibility, believing that understanding will set us free. But peace doesn't come when they understand you. Peace comes when you realize they never had to. The truth is, not everyone is capable of seeing you the way you see them. Not everyone has the emotional clarity to receive your love with the same depth and respect you offered it. Some people live behind the walls of their own unhealed wounds, and no matter how kind or honest or patient you are, they can't meet you where you are because they haven't even found where they are themselves. And so, when they don't understand your pain, when they twist your truth or deny your experience, it hurts. It feels like betrayal layered on top of heartbreak, but the more you try to make them understand, the more power you give them over your healing. You keep opening your heart, hoping they'll finally see what's inside. You keep explaining, defending, repeating the same stories, trying to paint the picture one more time. But some people are committed to misunderstanding you, not because they hate you, but because understanding you would require them to face themselves, and that's a mirror they're not ready to look into. Letting go of the need to be understood is not giving up. It's not admitting defeat. It's choosing your own sanity, your own stillness, your own emotional freedom. It's deciding that you don't need validation from someone who never had the capacity to value you. It's realizing that your worth is not up for debate and your truth does not require their confirmation. You were there, you know what happened, you know how deeply you cared, you know what you gave, what you asked for, what you needed. You don't need them to agree for that to be real. There's something sacred about choosing peace over the need to be right. Something powerful in saying, even if they never understand, I will not keep myself trapped in a conversation that was never equal to begin with. Because the more you try to be understood by someone who's not willing or ready, the more you delay your own healing. You revisit the same wound, hoping that if you show it to them just one more time, they'll finally say, I see it now. But healing begins when you decide to bandage it yourself, to stop picking it open for the sake of someone else's recognition, to stop begging for empathy from someone who couldn't give it when it mattered. Peace is quiet, peace is soft, peace doesn't beg, peace doesn't argue, peace doesn't need an audience. It happens in the privacy of your own soul, when you stop waiting to be seen and choose to see yourself. When you say, I know my truth, and I will no longer exhaust myself trying to prove it, that is when real freedom begins. When you release the need for understanding from someone who couldn't see you clearly, you finally make room for people who will. Your healing doesn't require their apology. It requires your permission to let go. It's easy to believe that in order to fully move on, you need to hear the words, I'm sorry. You wait for that text, that call, that message that acknowledges your pain, your worth, your effort. But some people will never give you that, not because you don't deserve it, but because they don't have the emotional tools to offer it. They'll carry on as if nothing happened while you're left holding the pieces, but your healing was never meant to depend on their remorse. It was never meant to wait on them waking up to their impact. Healing is a choice you make when you decide that your peace is more important than their accountability. It begins the moment you stop rehearsing how they might one day make it right and start giving yourself the compassion they never could. It's in the moment you realize you can grieve what happened, learn from it, and still not need them to understand or agree. Their apology may never come, but your growth doesn't have to be delayed because of their silence or their pride. You are allowed to move on without closure. Choosing peace is choosing your future over the unfinished chapters of your past. It's recognizing that while you can't change what happened, you can choose what you carry forward. Too often we remain emotionally stuck in what didn't work, what wasn't said, what never became. We relive the heartbreak, hoping that maybe this time it will end differently in our minds. But every time you go back, you're investing energy in something that no longer exists. Peace is the quiet refusal to keep turning the pages of a story that's already done. It's choosing to protect your heart from the weight of unanswered questions. It's deciding that you deserve more than recycled pain and delayed healing. When you choose peace, you're choosing to be present with your own growth, with your own hope, with your own forward movement. You stop defining yourself by someone else's inability to love you properly and start defining yourself by how deeply you choose to love yourself now. Peace doesn't erase the past. It simply releases your need to live in it. It's not about pretending it didn't happen, but about no longer letting it control the direction of your life or the softness of your spirit.